Okay, following the austerity years after the Second World War, it was pretty obvious that steam had reached the limits of its development, and for trains to run faster, longer trains, heavier trains, at higher speeds, we would have to excuse me, swap to electric traction. And since it was impossible to electrify the whole of the railway system, of course, the idea was born that locomotives would have to generate their own electricity, and to do that they'd have to be fitted with a big high-capacity diesel engine and a generator, and that the current from which could be used to drive electric motors on the wheels. And which is exactly what this is. It's a sort of mobile generating station with added extras. The difficulty with doing that sort of thing was finding suitable diesel engines. For example, here we have a photograph of a Sulzer engine for railway traction. It's very large. You can see in comparison to standing figure, stretches from floor to ceiling, 6 cylinders, generator unit on the back. That is very, very fine piece of engineering, but considering its weight and its bulk, it only develops 1200 horsepower. And if we want to run trains consistently at 100 miles an hour, then we need something over 3000 horsepower. So what English Electric decided to do in the early 1950s was to switch to an in-house engine developed by Napier's, which was a very light, very compact, multi-cylinder 2-stroke diesel, which, considering its small size and weight, developed a very large amount of power, to wit 1650 horsepower. And this unusual engine, which was developed from a pre-war Junkers aircraft engine, is a multi-cylinder 2-stroke diesel where the cylinders actually work, or the pistons work outwards against crankshafts at each corner. Okay, very simple engine, because being a 2-stroke, where the air for combustion and the exhaust comes in and out of the cylinders through slots in the cylinder walls, there's no valve gear, and as I say, considering how small it is and how light it is, the available horsepower is enough to, if you put 2 of them in one locomotive, you've got enough power to do what you want. Okay, so this particular locomotive was designed and constructed in Preston here at the English Electric Works at Strand Road, which is just up the road here. It went onto the rails at the end of 1955 for sort of basic trials, and when these were successful, it was extended out onto the main line. And for several years it worked with British Rail, although of course this particular locomotive always belonged to English Electric. But in trials with British Railways, it covered something over 400,000 miles when it suffered a major generator failure and was laid aside for a time. British Railways were impressed with it to the extent that they ordered a fleet of 22. They weren't built here, they were built at the Vulcan Foundry at Newton New Willows. Okay, so far? So here we are, we're in the cab, the number 1 end of the locomotive. In service it was driven obviously by a driver. He sat here, he qualified for armrests, very nice. These are covered up because after 60 years the leatherette's getting a bit tired. He had all the controls to hand here, the starting and the master controller there, and the starting buttons and so forth. Full instrument panel including a speedometer, because the locomotive was designed and built to travel continuously in service at 100 miles an hour. Power handle here. It's not like an accelerator in a car. This works in a series of steps. I think there's 8 of them, and you pull this round to step 1, step 2 and step 3 according to the speed and the load. Because the carriages at the time were still vacuum braked, the locomotive has a dual braking system. There's air for the locomotive, air pressure braking, which is a much more modern way of doing it, and combined in here is a vacuum system for the carriage brakes, for the passenger carriage brakes. Now the air for the brakes and other accessories and the vacuum is all generated by machinery in the nose. There's a vacuum exhauster in there, an air compressor. They're all electrically driven from the auxiliary generator, which I'll show you. And there is also a blower motor supplying cold air through flexible trunking under the floor to the motors on each bogie, which otherwise would get very, very hot, particularly on starting when there's no slipstream. And all that machinery is carried in the nose. This is the only Deltic, being the prototype, which actually has the porthole in the nose for the fitting of a headlight. In 1955, when this was built, the accent in British industry was on export, and it was hoped that foreign railways would buy some of these because of their design. And of course, for many of the overseas railways, locomotives are fitted with headlights, but nobody bid for this one. So the only quantity of these locomotives built was the BR fleet of 22. Okay, well here's the heart of the beast, or one of the two hearts. This is the Deltic engine, and in comparison with that Sulzer engine I showed you, of which I showed you the picture, it's very, very compact and lightweight for the power it produces. It's 88.3 litres in its 18 cylinders, It weighs just over 5 tonnes and produces 1650 horsepower. It's a water-cooled two-stroke. The radiators are in the ceiling above our heads, and what you can see there, the big red propeller shafts, are the fan drives in the roof. One fan there, drawing the air through the radiators all the time. And of course it's not just water cooled, the oil coolers are also there, because the oil gets very, very hot in these engines. There's no valve gear. There are 3 camshafts and they rotate at crankshaft speed, and their sole purpose is to drive the combined fuel pumps and fuel injectors. And that's that lot for this bank of cylinders. Under here is one of those crankshafts. There's another one of these along the bottom of the engine, and another one again on the third one on the other side. So that's 18 cylinders, 3 crankshafts, and they're all geared together inside that gear case on the end there. And then of course the main generator, the big one, is connected directly to the engine. Above it is the auxiliary generator for the electrical supply for the equipment in the nose. That's the auxiliary generator. That has its own drive from the top of the gear case. You'll be able to see it there, a little coupling shaft from the gear case to the auxiliary generator. So, all very nice. Okay.
The turbo of its day.
Not really. It isn't pressure charged in the sense that supercharging is. This is just a matter of getting all these engines with this type of piston layout have to have the air pushed in, because they don't suck it in, you see. With any installation, with any installation like this in an enclosed space, you need a fire extinguisher system. If you look up in the ceiling there, you can see there's a sensor convenient to the engine, and 2 discharge horns. And if the temperature in here exceeded a critical level, then an alarm would sound in each of the cabs. The engines would shut down automatically, and carbon dioxide would flood into the engine compartment to suppress flame. It's not that diesel fuel itself is particularly volatile, but in an enclosed space like this you tend to get odd pockets of gas and fumes and things which might well light up in the right circumstances. So that's all automatically taken care of. But this is the train heating boiler. It's a Vapor Clarkson boiler. It just generates relatively low pressure steam to go out through the train system to keep the carriages warm. All that is the automatic or semi-automatic equipment to make it work. And the second man's job was to look after this, in as much as it wanted looking after anyway. It has its own fuel supply drawn from the main tanks, and its own water supply, of course, for the steam, and that could be topped up en route from scoops on the bogies, in the same way that the steam locomotive tenders top themselves up from water troughs laid on the track. Ow. Stop banging me head on this one, after all these weeks.